welcome everyone. So I'm here with Dr. Armour today for our live aspiration experiment. We're going to do a couple of tests that are going to answer the question, well, challenge the notion really that there is no point in aspirating. But to do that, I need to give you a little brief rundown on some physics so that you can understand exactly what the rationale is behind these experiments. So if you come up here, I'll show you. So everything with aspirating is really centered around this one equation, which is Pucell's law. I don't even know how to say it, but it's I think Pucell's comes up quite a lot on the internet. But you call it Pucell's law, and it's essentially the physics that governs what the big debate is all around, which is these four variables. So if you want to understand what's going on with aspirating, and you know, when you see people debate on forums what they're talking about, they're mainly talking about the mathematics that comes from these four variables, and then they're also talking about some of the false positives or false negatives that you might get, which might mean that the test isn't worth doing. So the intention of this experiment is to get you guys thinking about it, to understand a lot more about how this maths all works when you're actually practically aspirating in a clinic, so that you can interpret some instances when you may get a false negative, some instances where you might get a false positive, and of course the most important, which are when you're actually picking up a sign that's actually going to end up protecting your patients from a vascular occlusion, which is what it's all about. So the four variables, really important to understand. The first, this is your needle, by the way, blood vessel on this side, cylinder that you're aspirating with, and the needle that goes in. And the model that I'm working with is that for an aspiration to be positive, as in to enable you to see blood in this part of your syringe, you need to suck filler and blood all the way through the cylinder, back up here, and then into this little space. So that's essentially the test that we're relying on. When you're aspirating, you're essentially saying that this will happen. That if I pull back on the syringe a certain amount and I'm in a blood vessel, I should see blood over here. Now there are times when that isn't the case, which you're going to see later on. And different fillers all have different parameters. So pressure difference is one thing we're going to control. We're going to pull back each syringe is going to be pulled back 0.2 of a mil. That, I think, is about roughly what you might be able to do in a daily clinic. Now, obviously, right at the beginning of your syringe, it might be on the smaller side, but that's what your average aspiration probably is about 0.2 mils. Now, you might be able to do more, and that, in theory, would increase the sensitivity, because if you increase the pressure difference, you increase the flow rate, which is the thing I haven't said. All of these all add up to one important outcome, which is the flow rate. And the flow rate has to be sufficiently fast so that you're not standing there for 5 hours waiting to get blood to come back through the syringe, because no one's realistically going to do that. So the flow rate has to be sufficiently fast. So what we're really testing here is the flow rate. We need to know that the flow back through the syringe is sufficient, through the needle, is sufficiently quick that is actually worth doing. That's essentially the question. So other things that change your flow rate, apart from the pressure difference, is the length of the tube. The longer your needle, or if you're using a cannula, you're going to decrease the flow rate, which means you're going to have to wait longer for the same result. Of course, you've got the viscosity of the actual product. So we've got a whole range of different products to test, and all of them have different viscosities. So we need to be aware of how viscosity affects things. I'm going to come back to viscosity in a second so you can interpret some of these. And then, of course, the radius of the tube. That's the thickness of the tube that you're actually pulling back through, and that's actually disproportionately powerful, because, as you'll see in the equation, it's to the power 4. So another way of saying that is the flow rate is proportional to the pressure difference. So if we change it, it'll change proportionately. It's also it's inversely proportionally to the viscosity. So the more viscous, the slower the product will pass back down the tube, and the less sensitive your aspiration. And of course, the longer the tube you're aspirating through, the less sensitive. So it's inversely proportional to length. The difference with the radius is it's to the power 4, which means if you halve it, you increase resistance by 16 times, so it makes a huge difference. So that's something we're going to hopefully see play out when we try different size needles at different points in the experiment. But it's a really important one to understand, that you can increase sensitivity a huge amount by using slightly bigger needles. Last thing I was going to say about viscosity is this is the number that's up here, the viscosity number. And I wanted to just put in context what we're actually dealing with, which is This is the most viscous filler, which is Restylane sub-Q, and the viscosity number is 349,830. Voluma is down here at around 60,000. Then you've got the lowest viscosity tested in this experiment that I found, which was Juvederm Ultra, which is 7,300. And here you've got, right down here, you've got blood, which has a viscosity number of 3 to 4. Interestingly, milk is about 3, so if you want to run your own experiment without sticking a needle into your arm, do it with milk, because it's actually really, really close to blood. And then water is down here at 1. So that's really helpful to you for you to understand. The thing I think is most useful to understand about that is, even though I'm about to get stabbed for science, is that essentially it doesn't make a big difference when what in terms of whether you're aspirating water or blood. It's only a small percentage when you're dealing with some of these huge numbers here with the actual thickness of the filler. So by far the biggest viscosity variable is the viscosity of the filler going back up the tube, and that's why all of the needles we're going to be testing today we're going to have primed, which means this barrel of the needle will be full of filler, and then we'll aspirate it back out. And the blood will also play a component, but it's not the biggest component. The most interesting thing really is how the viscosity of the filler and the needle will change the variable. So I'm going to stop talking, stop putting things off, and go and let Dr. Ahmed, who is thankfully an anaesthetist, so he's very good at sticking needles in, no pressure. And we're going to do some experiments with some of the main brands of dermal fillers. So, as you can see, there's loads of different fillers that we can try. I don't really want a needle in my arm for every single permeation, so I'm just going to get them away. So we're going to do a spectrum to validate. That'll be the first step. We're going to validate that it actually works. So I'm going to start with Juvederm Volbella, which is the least viscous. We're still testing them with whatever the manufacturer supplies. So if they supply us with a 30 gauge needle, that's what we're going to use. Now, as we know from the maths, you could change that enormously if you wanted to. You could put if you put a 25 gauge needle into me, it would be really sensitive compared with the 30 gauge. But we're just going to use whatever the manufacturer supplies. So we'll do Juvederm Volbella first. Yeah. So we're short of a tourniquet, so I'm using my arm. So all of this is, by the way, as you can see behind me, is being filmed by our videographer team, and they are going to make some much more high quality videos which you'll be able to get on our webpage later on. If you subscribe to this, is it just seeing you have to write subscribe on this live? Yeah. So if you write subscribe on this live, we will put in front of you later on the results in much more high quality. And you can see a close-up of...
So I've primed this 10 minutes ready.
Yeah.
Are you ready as well?
Yeah, ready as I'll ever be.
That's a positive aspiration now.
Really quick.
Really
I hardly felt that. You're good. Okay, that can come out. I'll let go of that. So that was pretty much immediate. Volbella is pretty much immediate.
I didn't have to pull all the way to 0.2. I just had a little bit of negative pressure on the plunger, and I got a positive aspirate straight away.
It's a highly sensitive Volbella. I think that's probably one of the least viscous. So it might be interesting to compare it, because I know there's something interesting about the Juvederm Ultra 2. If we do one with Juvederm Ultra 2, if this stops bleeding, you should see an interesting difference in timing. So all of these syringes are being primed. As I said in the beginning, they've all got filler. They've all got filler in the cylinder of the syringe, which is what we're really testing.
You ready, Finn?
Ready?
I'm just going to go one more time.
The Juvederm Ultra 2 doesn't actually work very well, which is why there we go.
There you go.
So that took ages. Isn't that interesting? We think of Juvederm Ultra 2 as a thin product and therefore, easy to aspirate. But how long were we in there for? It's quite a long time. 7 or 8 seconds.
Close to 10.
We're going to get all the timings from the video cameras towards the end.
Just put pressure on that 10.
So, how much injection my arm can take, which one should we do next? Relax. Let's see how Relax performs. So this is all with the needles that we get with the products. This is Relax have a specific name which I noticed on their needles. Some sort of magic needle brand. I'll let you know how magic it is in a second. It's not magic needles, it's something else they call it. Anyway, it's the first box of Relax I've had. Okay. Choose a fresh spot, Ahmed. Really quick.
Not instant, but fairly quick.
Yeah. Right. They're all working, so for well, Juven Watch 2 is quite slow. Let's choose. Let's go for the next one. Is a really thick, fairly stodgy filler, I'd say. It'd be interesting to test as a Stylage XXL. So it's designed to really to do things like chin augmentation. Not a product I use a lot, but I've used it in the past on special request. So this should be interesting because I think in theory, being a more viscous product, it should take a little bit longer to aspirate with. There we go. So a little bit slower, but it worked. So I think so the next stage is we're going to get blood out a different way. I'm going to although it's actually working quite well, just taking it straight from. Just wondering if we can avoid a cannula. Let's do another one with Voluma. Definitely better when you don't look at the needle.
That's positive aspiration, yes.
Really quick. Okay.
It's 5.
I know if I will have to work because that's in between the two. Let's do Juvenile Ultra 3.
Wasn't instant, but quick.
Let's do. It's not hurting as much as I thought it was. So I'm feeling a bit braver. Let's do the TSL Density 2, and then we'll do Bolitera. Goes to show you how psychological this discomfort from injections is. Straight away.
Can you just hold that, please? But it's
That's interesting. A bit slower. I'm very surprised. Felt like quite a low viscosity product. I thought that would. We've done all.
We've done most of the
brands, and that's just. I mean, we've done so much. I feel like I should just do the bow lift as well. And then we've done all of them straight from the arm. Immediate. Okay, great. So that was a lot easier than I thought it was going to be pain-wise, and we've got all of them. All of them are very quick, except for Bolotero, Judah Ultra 2. Even the XXL, the standard XXL was a bit slow. But yeah, really interesting how well it actually worked. I don't know if I need to have a cannula put in to do the rest. Yeah, I think that's the job done. I'm quite pleased with that. I'm really pleased it didn't hurt that much. So yeah, so what we're going to do next, we're going to get the timings from the videos, and we're going to, sorry, I don't know what I'm looking at. We're going to get the timings from those videos, playing it slowly, and we're going to produce a table of data. We've got some other data which we did previously when I was doing my complications course, so we've got some other tests that we've done in a different experiment which we didn't do live, and we'll do those as well. So we'll put all the data together and give you an idea of which fillers, how long it takes, how long you should aspirate with each individual filler, maybe which fillers don't work, which instruments are less likely to work. We'll do some work on cannulas as well. And then you can basically make much better decisions on when you should be aspirating, have a bit more confidence on when there's no point aspirating, so that you don't have to do it with all products all the time. But I really hope that helps. Remember to come back, type subscribe on this live feed, so that you'll be presented with the data. We'll retarget an advert so that you can come back and get that data free, so you can see exactly what we've actually managed to find out in this brief little experiment. But thank you very much for watching. Anything else I need to say? I feel like that was quicker than I thought, because I've changed some of the parameters. Justine, you happy with that?
Yeah, there's people asking about a cannula aspiration, please.
Yeah, they want the cannula. So I'm going to. We have tested that before, and it does work. I don't really want to do it live. Like again, I don't really want the big needle stuck in me. Only because I can't stick a cannula into my arm, so it's I can't stick one of these that we normally use. So I'm going to do it a different way, where we'll get some into a cylinder on a syringe, and that will be on the web page afterwards. We will get some footage of a cannula working, because we actually already have some from a previous experiment. So we'll do that. Take some blood on it and put it in a different device, and then test it. Unless you want to, tell you what, because I don't fancy this. Why don't we just take some blood in that and we'll do a cannula one as well. Okay. I've changed my mind. I'm just going to keep the live going, but I'm just going to avoid having the whole cannula put in my arm. We're just going to take a sample of blood, and then we'll do a couple of cannula tests. Since arm is doing so well, it's not hurting.
Questions at the end as well.
More questions at the end, yeah. Mm-hmm. Keep the questions going. Maybe I should give that vein a break. I
think that would be the last.
Last
we can get something out of it, but not more.
It is all in the same vein as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
You ready, Tim?
Yeah. Thank you very much. So now we have a syringe full of blood, and we can slip the lid off that.
This is over here.
I'll stick this on so I'm not hemorrhaging over everything. Let's be quick before the blood clots. So we're going to take some, what would be interesting,
25 gauge.
25 gauge. Choose something thick first. Juvenum Ultra Smile or Juvenum Ultra 3. So this will be on the slow end compared with the Vicross. I'm going to prime that so there's filler come out the end of it.
I'm ready.
Oops. Tell me when you're ready.
Okay. 1 sec. Ready.
So this is primed, just a little drop there, you can see. So not that surprising, it doesn't work. It's quite a thick product. We've certainly gone over what most people would practically be expected to do in a clinic, day-to-day clinic. I can see the filler coming out of it though, so it is slowly tracking out. It probably would suddenly flash red after about, a minute or so, but that's not realistic if we're going to do that in a clinic, normal day-to-day clinic. So let's do the same with Juvenum, an intermediate filler, so Juvenum Volift. Intermediate thickness, but just prime that, you can see the fillers coming out of that. Tell me when you're ready. You'll be able to see this up close. We're using a very high quality lens that will show you in much more detail this working.
I'm ready.
So let's slide that in. And immediate. So 25 gauge with Volift, that worked pretty much within a second. It's interesting to see. Let's do fairly like Volbella will definitely work if Volift works, so we'll test that again. But let's do try and do this. It's quite thick. This is TSO density 2, isn't it? Yeah. So we'll try the TSO 1.
There's some TSL here, 10.
Some more? Oh yeah. This is a clean one. So prime the cannula. Ready? And 1, 2, 3. Yeah, pretty quick as well. That works well. Let's do some. We'll do the Relax. Slightly thicker. I was impressed with how well that aspirated actually. primed.
Yep.
Ready? There we go. So a bit significantly slower, but it works. Let's do a insulin syringe with this is juvenile voluma. So a lot of people are doing this more and more. This hasn't clotted; it's still very liquid. So we'll try voluma, prime it. I think these are 31 gauge needles, so they're a bit narrower. Interesting to see how sensitive this is. Yeah, that works. Let's try the Stylage XXL in an insulin syringe. We'll do the cannula as well. So prime that. Brilliant silver.
Almost. Yep.
So not surprisingly, it's very slow. Nothing's happened yet. Gone beyond what would be reasonable, I think, to hang around for. I'm going to pull it a bit further back. There we go. So it works, but it takes ages. I think if we do, let's do that with a cannula as well to get the difference.
Longer cannula, or try 15 minutes.
Should we try a long,
Or you want a standard?
let's do a standard one and the one we've done so far. Stylage. I think I can do it with, assume there's too much blood in this. So I'm just pushing this through, hoping that it'll run clear, and then I can say it's a fair test. But this is very mixed with blood, so. Okay, it's about 90% clear, so it's not the fairest test, but I have a feeling it's not going to work anyway, because it didn't work that well with a needle. We'll try.
Ready?
I am going over my point 2, which because I just know it's going to take forever. I'm going to say that doesn't work. I was going to do that in clinic. Right. Any others we should do with cannula? Let's try realistic scenario, a long cannula of juvenile voluma. We know voluma works with a 25 gauge 38 mil. Let's see what it can do with a 50. This is running clear, so that will be a fairly good test. Ready?
Ready.
Probably gone beyond, how many seconds is that? Feels like forever. Aspirating for 10 seconds is a long time. Thankfully most of these are within a few seconds, which is helpful to know. We're way beyond what I would consider a useful test now. I'm going to say that doesn't work. And volume is quite a good product to aspirate with, so it's probably not going to work with most of them. Let's try it. One last one where you do Volbella with a long cannula. So 50 ml cannula, Volbella, primer. Ready?
Ready.
Straight away, amazing. So Volbella is an extremely sensitive product to aspirate with, which is a good thing because if it flows out easily, it also flows in easily, which means you can block more with a low viscosity product. Okay. I think that's it. I think we've covered loads. We're going to do, there's more data we'll compile, and then we will present this all. As I said, subscribe if you haven't already on that, on the live feed, and we will put in front of you an option to go onto our website and get all of this data that we've collected, and hopefully make better, clearer, more rational decisions about whether you should aspirate or not when you're injecting. So,
A lot of people are asking if it's going to be different in a facial artery.
well, if you think about the pressure difference, the biggest variable going back to Buselli's law, the biggest variable is the pressure difference, and what you actually will have then is higher pressure in an artery than in a vein, so it should be more sensitive in an artery, not less sensitive. So there are lots of other things that can make you get a false negative though. So you might, for example, have your needle up against the wall of a vessel. Anyone who's taken blood knows that sometimes that happens. You're in the right place and you don't get any blood. So there are lots of reasons why you can get a false negative, but all things being equal, with a needle inside an artery, it's going to be more sensitive than inside a vein because there's pressure there to push the blood and the filler back up the syringe. So basically, it's better. You should have more likelihood of getting a correct positive. Yeah. Any other questions I can go through now?
Not currently, no. That's the main question.
Okay. Great. So yeah, thanks for watching. You can write more questions as you go on. There's also going to be a podcast that follows all of this where we go into this in a lot more detail. But I hope you find it interesting and hope you find it useful in your practice. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you, Ahmed.
Thanks. Sorry for waiting.
That was really good, actually. I'm just more concerned about my blood.
Yeah, are you on heparin or something?
It's just like, well, it's not clotting, but it's also